Okay, we have speed, as we used to say in the TV business.
Yes, we did. Um, what I really loved when you were talking the other day is about your writing and when you started and all those stories about home.
Oh, right. When I started, you want to just talk about that a little bit? When I was very young, actually, I wanted to be a writer because I was so overwhelmed by how wonderful books were, because people read to me. My mother and my grandmother used to read aloud, and I thought, okay, that's what I want to do. And so I decided to be an author. I wanted to be an author because I thought that sounded grander than just being a writer, you know. That was my intention, and I wrote a short story when I was about 6. My mother kept it, otherwise I wouldn't have remembered, and it was about a family with a lot of children who went to the beach and stayed in a hotel. My work has always figured hotels, largely, I like them. and there are about 7 children, and every time they make a suggestion about doing something adventurous, the adults all say, "Oh, what a good idea," which that was my first story, and I illustrated it.
And talk about your 3 brothers and what you made them do.
Oh, my 3 brothers, I used to line them up and make them listen to me reading aloud when I was a bit older. Largely Kipling's Jungle Book, actually. It was my favourite story. So I've been sort of making people listen to me read aloud for a very long time.
And you still do?
I still do. I thought of it when I was reading aloud at the studios the other day, yeah.
Let's talk about this book.
Yes, okay.
The name of it and...
It's called Elena, Leo, Rose, which are the first names of the 3 people involved in the story and with each other. Shall I say a bit more about them?
Yes.
Leo and Elena are married to each other, and Rose is their next door neighbour in Edinburgh, and it takes place in the 80s, just about the time, Margaret Thatcher was running the UK, and before the Berlin Wall came down, and it takes place mostly in, altogether in Europe and Britain. And my 3 characters, they have a fairly complex relationship, let's say, which works out and nobody gets hurt, which I thought was entirely possible to do, and I still do, actually.
Well, let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
So, talk about the importance of art in both the women's lives.
Oh, and both of the women, yes. Elena is a painter and Rose is a poet. So they really, art is very important in both of their lives. And that's partly where they connect. But they meet, actually, at the beginning of the book, as a protest. They've gone down to Greenham Common, to protest against the USAF missile site there. They had cruise missiles aimed, I suppose, at Russia at the time. And they meet on a protest and realize that neither of them is a heroine, and they agree with each other about the possibilities of loving more than one person. So they bond about that as well as about their art.
And they have a very passionate relationship just between them.
They do. They're really good friends. Yes. Passionate, but not sexual. It's just a really good friendship. Yeah.
And then there's Leo.
And then there's Leo, who's a doctor, who's always at work or on call, and who is actually quite envious of the way these 2 women manage to hang out drinking wine and going to art shows without him, and longs to join in, and he joins in with the story, but in a different way. Yeah.
And what happens?
What happens? Well, they go to Italy together, but Rose gets divorced from her husband, it's not going well at the beginning of the story, and Leo and Elena invite her to go to Italy, and they have this vacation together with their children, Leo and Elena's children, boys. And sometime after that, Rose and Leo decide to act on the attraction between them, and they actually start an affair. Meanwhile, Elena is, it's known but not really talked about, as having an affair with somebody in Scotland that she met when she was at art college there. So in a sense, she's sort of allowed this to happen. She has almost invited it to happen, so to balance things out. And my thought was about that it is possible, if you're careful and, you know, love each other and everything, to avoid the sort of cliches of somebody's cheating on somebody else and somebody else getting really upset and divorce, etc. So, but it's not without difficulties and heartbreak at times, but it also resolves into a sort of balance, but I felt that one that can't last beyond the end of the book. Somebody has to drop out.
And we're not going to talk about that. Who drops out?
Well, I'll leave something to the reader to discover. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who's the strongest character in the book?
Well, I think Elena is, because she's sort of at the centre of things, and she almost, when she says at the beginning, I think Leo wants to invite you out to lunch, it's almost as if she's, you know, inviting something to happen between her friend and her husband, and she's completely caught up in her art. She's at the art college at the beginning, and then she becomes a painter, and she's also having this affair with a man in Scotland who she sees very rarely. I think she's the strongest character. She's also extremely generous and very sort of enthusiastic about life. I like her as a character quite a lot. And that's why the other two are so drawn to her, really. Leo says, I think she's the nicest person I've ever met. And they kind of agree about that, because she is.
This book has been very successful for you.
Well, it has in its small way, because it's got a very small publisher, and I've only really sort of got feedback from where I live in Key West about it, but I'm hoping that it will spread and get to a wider audience, yeah.
But for some people, the subject is too difficult.
Well, it's sort of understandable. It's the accepted version of this is that cheating is unacceptable, and if somebody sleeps with your best friend, you divorce them, you know, basically. And that's a lot of society is based upon this idea. So I think for people for whom that's a difficult concept, it's not surprising that they didn't like the book very much, honestly. You know, it does challenge a lot of received ideas, yeah.
I thought maybe you would talk a little bit about its form.
The form, yeah, sure. Well, it started life actually as a novel, quite a long novel, a long time ago, decades ago actually, when I first came here. Probably in the 90s, I think I started writing it. And because I felt far enough away from the whole European scene to kind of look at it from a distance. It didn't really work. Nobody wanted to publish it. So I put it away. And then much more recently, in about 2019, I think, I thought I really would like this to be published. I like this story, but it has to be cut down to size. It has to be reduced. And I decided to write it in its bare bones, just setting it in the present time, in these couple of years when this is going on. Leave out all the backstories and just write it as a novella. And it was really a pleasure to do, actually. I thought, I like doing short books with a lot happening in them, you know, and it's the first one I've ever done. So it's a novella, and it's only about 200, I don't know how many words, it's about 25,000 words, I think, maybe a bit more. But, so the form evolved out of a much longer piece of work.
What is your feeling towards the book?
My feeling towards the book, I really like it, I have to say. It's matured. There was a lot wrong with the first version, and it also shows me that sometimes if you leave things for years, it becomes evident what needs to be in the book and what doesn't, and that's something you can struggle with, you know, when it's very up close. I like it because I can plunge into it and read anywhere and think this is worth listening to. You know, and that's not true of every novel. Most, you know, if you land on a kind of creaky passage or one you don't like very much, especially in public, it's sort of embarrassing. You think, maybe I should have edited this out. But actually I feel that this book is edited and done in a way that pleases me anyway. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your coming here and about Alan?
My coming here to Key West?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I came with a sort of friend from Edinburgh who, I think we were coming for 2 months, and I had some money from the Arts Council in Scotland. They had travel grants in those days, which was really nice for us because there were not all that many writers who applied for them, and you could apply to go somewhere and write about it. So anyway, I came here and I met Alan. I didn't write that book for years because I was too busy playing around with him. And I did subsequently write a novel and thank the Arts Council very much for having given me the money to come here.
And what is your feeling about here?
Here, well, it became home. I mean, I love it. When I first got here, I thought, I met him pretty early on, and we sort of lived on a boat, partly on a boat and partly in a cheap hotel when the boat got a bit much. And I used to wonder, who are my friends going to be? Because everybody I met was pretty wacky, and I thought, I really need some women friends here particularly. And then I discovered that the place is full of writers, and I started to get to know people, and now it's the most amazing community, I think. So that's what I love about it, apart from the beauty of, where I'm looking out at your view now and thinking this is very special. So, yeah, it's become home.
But you do get away in the summer.
I do, when I can, get away in the summer. I go back to see my family, who are all on the other side of the ocean, and friends, old friends, and to get out of the heat, which I used to like more when I was younger, I think, and it was probably less extreme as well. Yeah.
I think you're very kind to other writers and aspiring writers. I think you're very generous.
That's nice, thank you.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think I've been on the receiving end of a lot of generosity and kindness from writers here. I mean, people like Alison Lurie, for example, she was incredibly generous to me in all sorts of ways, throwing a party for me when a book came out, all sorts of things she did for me. And Annie Dillard and Bob Stone, and I mean, people have been very, very nice to me. So I just feel like passing it on, frankly. And also, I like knowing what younger writers are doing, and feeling that there's a community here of people, because after all, we've all dropped off our perches. What's going to be left of the writing community of Key West? I feel like they need some encouragement, and to feel that there's a place for them, and that it will continue.
Do you want to say anything else?
Do I want to say anything else, Betsy? Well, not really. I think we've covered quite a bit of ground there. Thank you for your good questions. It's always nice to be asked good questions about my work.
They were what you talked about. How about Jane? Does Jane have any questions for you?
No, I don't think so.
Or Carey?
No, it says we've got 2 minutes left. I don't know what that means, but I think we're done.
Okay.
I think it was very good. I hope I got it.